Welcome to At the Heart of It, where we talk about life, celebrate creativity, champion entrepreneurship, and get to the heart of the why behind what we do. I am super excited because Laurenne Mercier,
Very
nice,
good.
nailed it,
Yep.
is with me today. I actually needed to ask you that before we started.
Yeah.
It's like I knew Laurenne.
Yeah.
Because I was
That's
wrong
the
about
toughest
that.
one.
I was wrong about that several times, and you didn't correct me. And then Mercier, I was like, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
It looks like Mercier, but it is. So thank you for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
Awesome. Well, so you are the founder and CEO of Treadstone Sports. And I've had the pleasure of chatting with you about a bunch of different things over the last year or so, probably. But what I find super interesting is that our paths have not crossed, but we have very similar stories over the span of our life, which is really fun.
Yeah.
So maybe why don't you speak to kind of your experience, through the music world to the, NHL side of things, to then, founding your agency, Treadstone Sports.
So just the rundown, hey?
Just the rundown. Like from like when you were born to...
Yeah. So it all starts in 1993. I guess it did kind of start in my undergrad in university. My plan was to go to law school. I wanted to actually be a sports agent. And then got to know an agent, and he kind of said, like, you know what, law isn't the way to go. It's so contractually bound by the league now. So I kind of pivoted a bit and went the business route. But at that point, I was so tired of school that I was like, you know what, I don't want to do the MBA. So ended up getting into a sports marketing program out of Oshawa, Ontario, where I got the internship with the Nashville Predators. Mm-hmm. So I feel like that has kind of been my biggest, pivot or life-changing moment with the Preds. I have always loved country music. Always. I've always been obsessed with Nashville. Like, I could probably talk for 45 minutes about Nashville.
Yeah, I'm with you.
So I'd been there multiple times before. That was my goal. I wanted to find a way to get down there. Found this opportunity as an intern. And then it turned out they were under 500 that year. And it turned out that was the year that we went to the Cup final. So again, just like absolutely life-changing. And that also was when I started working in the philanthropic side of things. So with the community foundation, and that's where I really found that was kind of my passion more than the agent side. Mm-hmm. But because I'm Canadian, couldn't stay in Nashville, transitioned to the Edmonton Oilers. I'm trying to make this all really cut down because I could make it super long. Transitioned to the Oilers from there, and they just have, it was so interesting because they have such a different, club, because the Oilers, just by nature of who they are, have such a fan base. Mm-hmm. People love the Oilers. The Preds, I kind of watched it transition to more of a hockey market, but they're very non-traditional in their hockey market. So I found that in Nashville, they really had to do different things to engage their fans. So a lot of people know about the Smash Car during playoffs, and they're very strong in the community, as are the Oilers, but the Oilers are much more kind of, set in their ways, not even in a negative way, just
there's more of a legacy there for sure.
Exactly, yeah. And so I found between the two clubs, there was a lack of marketing for the individual player. So it was kind of whatever the team was doing was what the player would get behind. And the Preds were really, really strong at kind of going to the player being like, what can we get you involved in? Mm-hmm. And then they'd make something work. And I saw that in that approach, it was just you'd get such a genuine engagement from the player. So that's where Treadstone kind of started to form in my brain. And then I approached a few different agents and just said, like, okay, if I came in as sort of like a marketing person and took your roster and basically individually marketed them away from who they play for, is that of value? And across the board, they were very interested in the idea. So yeah, there was one day that I was like, you know what, I'm just going to friggin' do it. And so I did. And then this cute little, not sure if you've heard of it, COVID, global pandemic.
So cute.
Came around, and so I kind of have been doing this basically since the start of COVID, which has been interesting. And I think it presented a lot of challenges, but also presented quite a few opportunities, just in the sense that I really got to know the players. I kind of got to, just build a different relationship with them because they had the time to really focus on what they were interested in. So there's a super long answer to your first question.
No, not at all. But you're also working on that with your brother, which I think is really fun.
That's right.
And Josh is a super fun, energetic individual, and my calls with him have been also fantastic. So maybe we have to have him on and give the other side of the Treadstone story at some point.
Yeah, he's way cooler than me. But
but what has that been like, being able to collaborate with your sibling in that way?
It's fun. It's really good. So he came on probably, I want to say 5 or 6 months ago. And he just has such a refreshing point of view. Like he's so good at, like there are things that I don't even think about, and he just takes this perspective and can totally run with it. And that's been something that has been just amazing for me. We're super close in age, so we've always been really, really close growing up. And so, yeah, it's nice. I feel like he lives on the East Coast right now. So it's that distance, I guess, is a bit of a struggle, but when he listens to this will be our shout out to get him back to Calgary. So no, it's been awesome. He's been super great, and he doesn't have the same sports background, which I think is actually kind of a benefit, because he again comes from a different perspective, and he has different life experiences and things that bring out a totally different side of it.
That's cool. So obviously this podcast is really about getting to the heart of the why behind what we do. And one of my favorite things when I was actually kind of combing through your website was I loved the why of Treadstone, and you've summed it up so well of, building a legacy for players that is lasting. It's beyond the actual sport, which I think is really interesting. And for me, being a previous athlete at a decently high level, you're going through, your whole life is about your sport and attaining success within the sport. And I actually talked to one of your clients, Alicia Risling, about this a little bit in our episode with her, which was that identity crisis after sport.
Right.
And what I think is so great about what you're doing is you're able to start to build the foundation while that athlete is playing, so that they have something to transition to when they retire from their sport. But can you speak to the impact that you're really trying to have on these athletes, kind of beyond what their performance is like on the ice or in their sport?
Well, I think you summed that up very well. So thank you. I would say that, to your point, like just giving them something that they can really throw themselves into, whether it's during their playing days or after. I think it just kind of brings out a different personality in them in a way. Like a lot of these players are fairly quiet about their off ice time, and that is either by choice or just because it's just something that they've never really gotten involved in. And I think that in addition to that, we're in a time these days that social impact is such a big thing, and these players have a pedestal and they have a voice, and they also have such influence over people, and to be able to kind of make a difference for a lot of them is a huge thing. And I think that was something that I really saw in Nashville, in the way that, like, so Pekka Rinne is just, I know he just retired, and he just is he always stands out to me in the sense that, like, it didn't matter if they won or if they lost. He would always come down after, meet the families. And if the family wanted to talk to him for 2 hours, he would stay and talk. And like, it was those little things I don't know, it was usually like 10 minutes, but that's 10 minutes out of his day that, like, these kids will be talking about forever. And now I'm 3 years out of my time in Nashville, and that's still the example that I'll bring up, just because I think that they have such a platform to do good. And that's kind of, at the end of the day, really what I want to bring out in them, is just this way that I want to help them be able to do something that they're passionate about, and give them the tools and the opportunities to use their voice and, just make a difference.
Yeah. I mean, that was my favorite part of, and the thing I probably miss most about playing junior hockey was, like, junior A in BC, you put on a sweater and you walk into a kid's classroom and it's like you're a hero. Like, and you're not really, because you're just like a kid who's also going to school, but just end up playing a decent level of hockey. And then, you're spending some time with them in the classroom, and you're, playing floor hockey with them. But the impact that you've made potentially on that kid's life is substantial. And I look at, like, again, one of your other clients, like Colton Parayko with the Blues Cup run. And is it Layla?
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
So, the impact that she then also had on the team because of the investment that him and the team had in her, it is, to me, that's also another story that's just very indicative of the life beyond the sport. So I'm curious what your perspective is on the impact that sport can have beyond entertainment. Like what to you do you, or to you, what does that kind of manifest into, and what does that mean for kind of the players and being able to do stuff beyond actually just playing and doing well or winning the Stanley Cup? Like, yeah.
I think it does just go back to that impact piece. Just like you've said, you walk into a classroom and these kids are so excited to see you just by nature of you having that jersey on. And like when I played hockey growing up, and my very first hockey camp, Martin Jelena and Oleg Saprikin came in and signed our little practice jerseys, and I still have it.
Yeah.
And like, it's one of those things that you really remember those, but then you remember the negative too. Like, I've heard a lot of stories that people will be like, yeah, so-and-so is my favorite player, and I put them on such a pedestal, but then they had this moment to like really do good, and they just kind of walked by. And so I think that it's tough. It's kind of a catch-22 in a way, because I think that these players have such an opportunity to do good, but then they're also in such a spotlight that they can be very criticized and they can be very picked apart. And there's been so many instances now, even just with social media, the way that they're just, I don't know, like grilled by the media. And so I think that it's tough for them because they are genuinely trying to do good, but then they're also now having to be trained that like you basically can't step out of line. So I don't think that answered your question at all. But.
No, but that leads me to another interesting one that I never even thought about, is like, how do you potentially approach some of the thorns that can be out there within social media and the marketing side of things with a player, if they're aligning themselves with a certain organization, and you have certain worries of like cancel culture and like all of this stuff that kind of comes along with having a bit of a celebrity, along with whether you're an athlete or an actor or whatever. Like, does that come into play at all when you're starting to work with your clients? For
sure. And I think that's a tough one, because like you can only prepare so much for it. You kind of go into it thinking, okay, like what are the things that could come our way? What are the negative feedback that we can get? And how do you kind of prepare for those things? But regardless, like, it's just like internet trolls. Like, I see it on LinkedIn, and I'm like, how? Like, it's LinkedIn. And there's just like, and so I just think that no matter how much you prepare, you're going to get that regardless. And it is just kind of going in with the mindset and the, like, even kind of just standing tall and being like, you know what, I'm doing this for good. And like, you take a guy, like you said, Colton Parayko, who is just like a gem of a human being, like one of the nicest people I've probably ever met, even outside of just hockey players. And like, he is just doing good, and he's doing it from a genuine place. And I know that we will get lashback, like from what he's doing. So yeah, I don't know, I guess just kind of going into it with that confidence, but then also with that preparation.
So when you did a collaboration with also previous guests on the podcast, which is Connor and Dustin from Local Laundry, and then Ryan Nugent Hopkins. When you're starting to kind of work through some of these collaborations and partnerships, and you know, trying to build a philanthropic piece into that, what is your process when you're going through that in order to kind of make sure that you're checking all the boxes and making sure that a project is a fit?
So the biggest piece for something like that would be that it's authentic on all fronts. And that's something for me with Treadstone that will be sort of like my hill to die on all the time, is that if it's not authentic and genuine to all parties, especially the player, then it's a no-go. Just because from the beginning, I've always kind of said, like, you can really see through that. And with these players, like, I'm not there to give them a huge endorsement deal or like align them with a brand that they have no interest in, but they're making a great paycheck out of. I think to me, that's kind of missing the point. And so with these collaborations, it's not just about like, the cause is a huge part of it too, but even that piece is something that aligns with the player. So with that specific collaboration, we worked with Ryan Nugent Hopkins and his wife Bree, with the help of the guys or the team, I should say, at Local Laundry. They designed that logo. We ran that by Ryan. We ran it by his agent, made sure that was all a fit. And then it benefited Ryan and Bree's choice, which was Kidsport Edmonton. And that was their choice, both because of what Kidsport Edmonton does for the community, but then also being in Edmonton, the place that they're now there for another 8 years. So, so just really making sure that it kind of works on all fronts, and then everyone does their best work that way too, because everyone's excited about it and everybody wants to promote it. And we did another one with Local Laundry and Wild Rose Brewery and Josh Morrissey,
right?
Which was, again, like, everybody was so excited about it because it all kind of just fell into place and it fit.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. And then, how important was it for you kind of at the beginning when you're founding Treadstone to make sure that the philanthropic piece was at, the core? I mean, almost every project that, we've spoken about at this point, there's a philanthropic component in it. It's not just aligning with like BioSteel or whatever, just randomly name dropping. And that's a product that we're going to promote. We're going to do it through social media. You have to check these boxes from, like, you have to have one video or two photos. Like, there's more heart to it than just a brand alignment. Like, how important was that to you when you started?
You know what? I think that was almost kind of like a selfish piece, because I just love it. Like, that's always been my favorite part of it. And like, just the impact that you see, again, going back to the Preds, like, or even the Oilers, like, a lot of my work was in that space. And the moments that you watch a kid's face light up because they're being impacted by a hockey player, or it's just the littlest thing that you see make a difference. And if I can be any part of that, and if I can help these players who I know have such a platform be any part of that, then that's just what I want to do. It's kind of that like purpose approach, like that. And so I just love that piece of it. And to be honest, Treadstone has kind of transitioned into that more. It was funny. I had a conversation with Connor from Local Laundry, and we were talking on the phone, and I remember so clearly, he was like, okay, I was having the friggin' meltdown. And he's like, okay, what is it that you love about what you do? And what was it that you hate? And I was like, man, I have never really been asked that question. And I think I gave him some BS answer in the moment, but then came back to him later and was like, I've actually thought about that question a lot more. And ever since that conversation, like, I realized, you know what, the philanthropic stuff is what I love the most. And that's where we transitioned from being endorsement deals, social media, that sort of thing, into more of building lasting legacies and aligning these players with something that they're passionate about. And I guess that doesn't always have to have the philanthropic piece, but so far it just has, because they're able to see that, okay, I really am invested in this cause, kind of thing. So.
Right. And then how do you balance kind of the for-profit with the non-profit type of piece when, obviously you're in business and there's, in business to make money so you can pay bills and eat food and all that kind of stuff. So how do you make sure that you're kind of balancing that through each project? I'm
still working through that. Yeah. I feel like my brother will tell you I'm a terrible business person because I just want to have fun and give back.
It's a great place to start. It's a fantastic place to start.
It just doesn't pay the bills very well. So that's something I'm kind of working on, and that's been really interesting because our business is very, I guess, niche. Like, it's kind of, it's a totally different model that I'm not exactly sure what makes the most sense, because there's aspects where we'll involve a huge company, like we'll have a corporate sponsor, and that's a very interesting route to have the profit versus nonprofit, still keeping everybody aligned. But then you have these like fundraisers or campaigns that really are just giving back, and so it's like, okay, yeah, we've put in all this work to do it, but then I'm like, I don't want to take away from the charity, but I'm not a great business person a lot of the time.
No, but the thing is you're building the relationship with the client, you're building the relationship with the organization, you're building the relationship with anybody who was at the event, right? Like, and that's, it's those short-term investments that may not immediately pay off that can pay off in the future for sure.
Like, I love those parts. I love the relationship piece. Like that, by and large, is my favorite part of what we do, whether it's meeting like meeting you or meeting like the guys at Local Laundry and I need to stop saying the guys at Local Laundry because they have an amazing team.
They do.
But yeah, it's just, you meet, and Calgary's been amazing for that. Like the small business, and whether it's Calgary Heritage Roasting Co., like the coffee shop, or whether it's a retail business like Local Laundry, or everyone's just so supportive, and I've loved that part of this.
I'm with you. I think it's been interesting. This is a short digression, but Kimberly my wife worked in Gatineau for, I think it was 4 months. And it was very different. And I never realized this, having been born and raised here. Were you born and raised in Calgary then too? There you go. Originals. All the conversation in a coffee shop out there was policy, because it's government. That's what people talk about. But you go to a coffee shop here and it's all about, I have this idea. Can you help me with this project? Like, I've got this business issue or this opportunity, something I'm excited about. Like, the conversation and the energy here is completely different than many other places in Canada, which I definitely took for granted until you start traveling around and experiencing different cities. So
that's awesome. That's really cool to hear.
Yeah. So it's makes it hard to like want to leave.
Yeah.
So we have to get your brother just
back. Yeah. This is his second shout out. We need to get you back.
Exactly. Josh, if you're listening to this.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So before we kind of move on from the hockey stuff and into some of the music stuff, because I would still love to dig into that a little bit. I told you that there was something that I kind of discovered on your LinkedIn page that I thought was super interesting, which was your thesis paper on, and I'm going to quote this, understanding the phenomenon behind the elite male hockey player in Canada. And the thesis specializes in the masculinity, violence, celebrity, and nationalism. And I was very fascinated behind why that topic, and B, what you discovered kind of when you went through that thesis.
Yeah. Okay. That's not what I expected to be the secret topic.
No.
So when I started out by saying that was kind of my undergrad was my big moment that I wanted to be in sports. It actually started from that thesis. I transitioned my degree even to be to be able to write that paper, because it's the way it started. Someone said something to me, and it was one of the hockey players I went to St. FX, which is a small campus. Everyone knows who the hockey team is. They have their own section at the bar. They get a good crowd out of the home games. Like, it was kind of American in that way. And one of the hockey players one time said, I don't remember his exact line, but it was something like, do you know who I am? And I was like, like, I was so taken aback. And I remember I went back to my residence at that time, and said to kind of told my friend the story, and she was like, same thing, like just dumbfounded by it. And I remember thinking, is it the stereotype or is it the player that makes the stereotype in Canada, or is it, I can't remember exactly, but we started talking about like, why in Canada are these players so sought after? Why is there terms such as puck bunny? Like, it's just such a culture here. And the fact that these players had their own spot at the bar, and like, it was just very interesting, and not even from the negative side. I was just kind of like, why is it here in Canada that hockey players are put on such a pedestal? And I really saw it in a small campus like that. So that's when I started writing the paper, and it took quite a few forms, but basically ended up being the stereotype behind the elite hockey player in Canada. And I touched on all sorts of different topics. It was an interesting year to be writing it, because it was the year that Patrick Kane had that big scandal. And it was the year that John Scott got into the All-Star game. So we started talking about things like the way that fighting, like Don Cherry took a very different approach to fighting than others did. And like, is that still something that's crucial to the game? And so that was kind of that violence piece. And then we talked about nationalism and the way that just like within Canada, we are so proud to be such a hockey driven country. And like my family for sure watches the World Juniors every year. And like, it's devastating when we lose. And like, same with the Olympics. And like, so those are some of the biggest. They talk about like the 1972 game between Canada and Russia, and they talk about when Sidney Crosby, the golden goal, and like there's all these things that are within our country and our culture that are so driven by hockey. So in the end, like what started as kind of like a negative topic really transitioned into something quite interesting in the way that the nationalism is involved and just all these different pieces of it, and doing the actual like research and looking at the literature and stuff like that gave me a different perspective from being a hockey fan, a hockey player, to kind of the actual research behind it, and then transitioning into a career in it. So it's just been kind of one other piece that has been interesting for me.
Yeah, no kidding. That's why I wanted to chat about it, because I just found it so fascinating where I never actually would have thought about it in that way until I read it on your LinkedIn profile.
Yeah.
Because having played hockey, for me, part of the transition for me was like I just didn't love the overall culture to a certain degree at the stage that I was at. It was just I was never one of the boys which I was fine with. I was a goalie, so I was already like an outcast and a weirdo anyways. But there was just something about it that just didn't feel genuine or authentic, or I was also the only one that wanted to go out into the community and do more stuff like that. And to be able to see you start to transition and build a whole company around the giving back portion of that, which I just thought was really, really great. So I would honestly read that thesis at some point.
Yeah, no, and
send it over.
No, for sure. Yeah, no, it's interesting to talk about too. And just my other point about it is there's little things that we kind of do and that we say that we don't even, like you said, we don't even realize that we're like adding to that culture. And an example, I was out at Stampede this last, I guess 2 weekends ago, and I was with one of my clients and another one of his teammates, and I've said to his teammate, like, I was like, do you always get this recognized? And he said, no, this is the first year I've really been so recognized. So like, cause you could just like, you were watching it, like just heads turn looking at this guy. And he said something along the lines of like, but I am wearing a ball cap, so I really just look like a hockey player. And it was just like something so simple. And you kind of realize like, yeah, like we do see this like stereotypical, just like, we even know when you say like they look like a hockey player, we can probably all visualize what we think is that look. So it's just those little things that we don't even realize we're saying, and not that it's a negative thing at all. It's just things that we've kind of grown up around.
It's also just interesting that it's like we don't have Hollywood, we don't have Nashville, we don't have like celebrities in the sense of actors or a bunch of musicians that are around in Canada, where like NHL players are by far probably, I guess, like per capita in Canada, like the biggest celebrities. So it's just very interesting to think of it that way. Yeah, you're making my wheels turn of just like how much of a difference that is. But like I said, I want to switch gears a little bit, because the music side is the other piece that I thought was really interesting that we had in common. That again, I don't know how we really didn't cross paths earlier, but I saw you released a little blog and said that you wanted to be a country singer when you grew up. Yeah. That didn't end up happening.
I'm channeling it in the outfit today.
Yes, you're channeling it in the outfit today.
Yeah. That was always my thing. I wanted to be like Shania Twain.
Nice.
But yeah, I don't know how that would have turned out.
Did you ever like learn how to play guitar or like sing or like take lessons?
I was forced to play the piano as a kid, as was my brother.
Nice.
He's actually more musical of the two of us, but we say forced now, but it's one of those things that we've just like kind of gone back to our parents and been like, okay, we admit that was a really good skill to have. Yeah. And I still believe it's a very good skill. I feel like every kid
does that. It was me. I didn't love it, but I'm glad I kind of now know how to play it. So,
like even read music. Like it's one of those things that I feel like I'm just lucky to be able to say I can read music. Where was I going with that?
Not sure. Okay. You wanted to be a country star at some point.
Yeah. So that
didn't happen.
No, yeah, and I took singing lessons, but that was a complete bust. I love to sing in the car. I think I'm an excellent car singer.
Everybody is, absolutely.
Yeah, it's amazing. But yeah, so no, that dream never came to fruition. So now I just channel it in my outfits and living in Nashville and that kind of thing.
There you go. Well, and you also worked with a couple Canadian country artists as well, and kind of worked within the Canadian country scene. How did that come about with kind of the trajectory of you moving towards more sports and being able to still do some partnership stuff within the music world?
Yeah, that was, it actually, funny enough, came from my time with the Oilers. Gord is a huge Oilers fan and did a lot of the alumni stuff. He's a big part of it there. Gord Bamford, yes, sorry.
Clarifying, that's okay.
Yeah, and his foundation manager, Corrine, we did some work with her.
Right.
So as my time with the alumni with the Oilers, we were quite involved with them. And that's sort of how I got introduced to that group. And then last summer was part of the Gord Bamford team. And it was a super interesting year because they did an awesome job at pivoting with COVID, because we did these drive-in shows in support of mental health. So again, we did it in partnership with ATB. And then depending on the other cities, had some other partners. And again, it was just one of those things that was authentic to every piece. And it was really cool to see the music side of things. And people often group sports and entertainment, and I think they should be two totally separate things. Like I felt like a fish out of water in entertainment, and sports is kind of where I'm very comfortable, but entertainment, like I was always learning new things. And
that is interesting, because I would group them together probably, for sure. When I think of like sports just at like the highest level is entertainment. Like that's why you pay a ticket to go and see, because it's pretty much live theater. You don't know in live theater, you know what's going to happen if you've seen the show before, but you don't know what is going to happen, right? And you're going and watching other people do something that you can't do.
True.
But at the same time, I do hear what you're saying of like the music world is very different business probably than the sports world, for sure.
Yeah. You know, that's a better way to frame it, is that like sports and music feel like two totally separate entities. And then in Canada, they seem so ingrained because like hockey and country music go so well and things like that.
Yeah. You got like Brett Kissel, who's hanging out with Jordan Everly all the time. Yeah,
exactly. Well, and he was down for the playoff run all the time in Nashville. And we had the anthem singers always played in Nashville.
Right.
But yeah, so it was awesome. Like it was such a great experience for me. And I kind of took on a little bit of a role of tour manager in a way, and which I loved. I love that kind of like logistical work. But again, it was just different. Like they'd ask me this stuff about like AV, and I'm just like, I don't even know what that stands for. Like,
audiovisual.
I'm like, just let me check real quick.
Let me Google.
First step, what does AV stand for? So it was just little things like that, or like setting up a stage, and it was because we were a small crew, and it was such an unprecedented times. People wore a lot of hats, which I also found really cool to see, is that like your stage manager is also ordering the team Subway, and like it's just like all these different things. And it was a cool experience. We were in a different Alberta town every weekend, riding the tour bus.
Nice. Living the music dream.
It was kind of like an out of body experience. Like I feel like in my head now, I'm just like, I can't believe that was my life for a whole summer.
Oh, for sure. I feel like that's just music in general. Like it's so fast moving, but there's also a lot of hurry up and wait. So it doesn't feel like you're doing anything, but you're doing a lot of stuff. Yeah. And then when it's done, you're like, what did just happen?
Exactly. And then you're packing up the stage and driving home. Like I was just like, okay, I guess on to the next.
Yeah. That's what I always find funny about a concert is like the anticipation. You're sitting in the seat, you're waiting for the opener, then you're waiting for the main act, and then the main act finishes their encore, and then it's like immediately the roadie crew is tearing down.
Yeah, lights are on, you're out.
Exactly. Yeah. It's just like, it's over. There you go. That's funny. I have a random question. Is like you work with like Andrew Mangiapane, you've worked with Milan Lucic, you've worked with Colton Parayko and Josh Morrissey, like all these amazing athletes. I know I'm backpedaling a little bit, but is there like a story that you can share of one of the players that like nobody else would know, and like really give a context of who they are as people that
that's a hard question.
They may not actually know from watching interviews and
that's a tough one, because I feel like a guy like Colton Parayko, for example, like I'm a big hockey fan, and I kind of know especially the philanthropic stuff and all this, and like he's the kind of guy that you would have no idea what he does outside of the rink, because he's so humble, he's so quiet about things. And it took like our first introduction conversation was 2 hours on the phone, and we got talking about all the things that he does. And like he goes once a month with a family that he met through the Ronald McDonald House and does that cooking for everybody else. And if he's in town and it lines up on the day that they're going, he will always go. And it's those little things that like no one would know, because he doesn't make it public, and not that he should, but like he's just so humble about it all the time. And
also does it from a genuine place. It sounds like it's not for the gram. It's not for PR. It's not for the Blues. It's for him. And that's
there. You wanted to say that.
I told you that was going to happen.
And he like, even the causes that we've aligned with. So his foundation hasn't launched yet. That'll be in the fall, but the Ronald McDonald House of St. Louis is one of the ones that we are aligning with for his foundation. And he has a place in his heart for them because of a teammate of his back in his college days that had to use the Ronald McDonald House down in Seattle. So it's like, it's everything that's coming from him is always genuine. It's always authentic. And like, it's been so cool kind of getting to know him better, because even having worked with him now for a year, I still feel like there's things that he's just so kind of like reserved about that. And he's a huge Seattle Seahawks fan, and I'm trying to get him to become a Saints fan. And this year he bought a Saints jersey.
Nice.
So I feel like it's working slowly but surely.
Are you a big Saints fan?
I'm a diehard Saints fan.
I did not know that.
I could talk for 45 minutes about that too. Like I'm very passionate about the things I'm passionate about.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
My brother too, though, and our parents. So we have.
Like, what was it about the Saints that it was?
So my dad, in his college days, when they were called the Aints, like they were like that big of the underdog, started cheering for them then just because.
Right.
And then they had a running back from North Battleford, Saskatchewan, called his name was Ruben Mays. And he got scouted at a track meet, so not even football. And he's from Saskatchewan, and so that just solidified it. So we've been like, we have All Saints Day. It's like a thing in our house. Like every Saints game is All Saints Day, and we do it up like brunch and mimosas and everything. So it's a big deal.
That is awesome.
Yeah.
That is so cool. I had no idea.
Really?
No.
Yeah, no, that's our, if people ask me like my favorite sports team ever, I would say the New Orleans Saints.
Okay, what's your second?
Nashville Predators.
Yeah.
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 And that's a tough one, because a lot of the team that I knew when I was there has now left. But I'm not really following teams in the NHL anymore. Like I'm really just following the player and kind of excited about how their success is going, which has been an interesting transition for me, because I've always been such a diehard hockey fan.
Yeah.
And now I'm really just rooting for who's on the team.
Yeah. No, I'm with you there. I have found that definitely over the last playoffs, for sure. Like I am a huge Carey Price fan.
Oh yeah?
Always have been. And so when he was in the Cup Finals, like I really don't care about Montreal, but I want him to win. So I can't even imagine the next level of you're working with all these guys that are playing on different teams, and you're kind of like cheering for the player, instead of the team. Yeah, there you go. Well, we're gonna start to wrap up here, and every episode we end with rapid fire.
Okay.
So it's like a series of. It's not super rapid fire, so don't feel stressed that you have to do it in one answer.
Okay.
But they start pretty simple, and then we get a little bit deeper.
Okay.
So brace yourself. Are you ready?
Yes.
Okay. So the first one is, what is one book that you feel everybody should read?
I've started slow right out the gates. Oh, that's a really hard question. I want to say the Harry Potter series, but that's not my final answer.
Okay.
And all 7. So that's 7 books that everyone should read.
Okay.
Okay, no, we have to come back to that one.
We have to come back. You don't have one?
I really, really like that question, and I want to do a good job on it, other than the Harry Potter 7.
Okay.
But I've read a lot of good books this year.
Okay.
We have to come back.
Okay, we can come back. What is your favorite song? Either of all time or right now?
Wide Open Spaces by the Dixie Chicks. Easy.
Awesome. Love it. Salty snack or sweets?
That's a hard one. I'm not going to make you come back to that one, but I'm going to probably say sweets. Okay.
Do you have a favorite sweet?
I think I like candy best.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Do you have a favorite candy, though?
Probably Sour Soothers.
Okay.
I just bought some at the grocery store last night.
Nice.
Yeah.
See, I'm particular on the Sour Soothers, though.
Yeah, they have to be the original, like the authentic ones.
Like the bigger ones
Yeah.
are like the best. I can't do the cheap fake ones.
Yeah,
They taste like soap.
It's true. It's
bad. Lazy beach vacation or crazy travel adventure?
Oh my God, these are hard. See, and I'm poking all these holes in it, because I feel like probably crazy travel adventure.
Okay.
But I do love a good beach vacation. No, crazy travel vacation.
Okay.
Final answer.
And where would you want to go on your next crazy adventure?
My bucket list is Switzerland. I'm trying to hit as many mountain ranges as I can.
You're a big hiker?
Huge hiker.
There you go.
And I just did, well, not just, but when we could travel, I did New Zealand.
Right.
And so Switzerland has been my next.
Cool. What is your favorite movie or TV show?
I'm not a big movie or TV person. I hate to admit it, but I still watch Grey's Anatomy. My mom and I are like all caught up in everything. So 17 seasons in. And I do love it.
Mind blowing.
I know. But that's part of what makes it so good, is the fact that they can keep going. Okay. So that's a book I read. Shonda Rhimes is the writer.
Yep.
And that gave me a whole new appreciation. Like her brain has had to work. She calls it laying down track. So she has to be laying down track for the next season for 17 seasons. So to me, I think that's pretty impressive.
Yes,
so I'm going to go with Grey's Anatomy.
She has a master class. Like you may find it super interesting, but it's
good to know.
I'm with you there. She's crazy. Favorite local small business in Calgary?
Calgary Heritage Roasting Co.
Yeah.
I love that place. Mike and Jamie, amazing. Their staff is always so amazing and accommodating. And like in the summer in the spring, I was posting up there. I would go all day and just sit and do work. And they just have such a amazing vibe.
Mm-hmm. There you go. Perfect. Here we go. So these start to get a little bit deeper. Great. Do you want to come back to the book one first?
No, not yet. I'm still not ready.
Sounds good. What is one quote that you live by?
Okay, I have a few. I would say, "We just might be the luckiest people alive" has been one of my favorite quotes. I saw it in a card shop in Edmonton back when I was in high school, I think. And that has just always resonated with me. Just kind of like living through gratitude and...
I am with you there.
Yeah, so I really, really like that one. I think it's still in my Instagram handle. It's
nice.
And then the other one is, "You're exactly where you're meant to be." And that's just been, I would say that's of late, because I find that, like, these are just tough times with COVID and everything. And it's hard to be like, what am I doing with my life? Like, just kind of like overthinking all those things. And so trying to bring myself back to, I'm really trying to be better at living in the present and just kind of enjoying the moment. So I know you didn't ask for explanations of my quotes, but
that's fine. I love it. That's fantastic. Those are two really, really good ones.
Thanks.
Who is somebody that you would want to thank for helping you get to where you are today, and why?
I would say, I know it's cliche, but my mom and dad and brother, especially now with that Treadstone's a year underway, like it has certainly not been the easiest ride. Like it has been really fun, but I would say even from starting a business to, being in this kind of business too is tough. Like I love working with the players, but that comes with its whole set of challenges as well. And they are just such a hype squad. They can also be tough love, which in the moment I hate it, but then like come later on, I'm just like, I needed that.
Yeah.
And then even like, they've always been, we're a very big sports family and they've always encouraged it. My parents really encouraged us to play sports growing up. They all surprised me down in Nashville. I hadn't seen them in like 6 months and they all surprised me. And it's just, they've kind of always been those crucial people in those moments of the best sports moments, and then into now a sports career. And now my brother working with me it sometimes can be like a family affair. Josh and I are like arguing about something and mom gets involved and it's just like, no, you can't
get out of here, mom.
In here. Yeah. So
that's funny. That's awesome. And then the last one before we circle back to the most important book one is, if there was a piece of advice that you could share with a younger version of yourself, what would it be?
Oh, with a younger version of myself. Oh, that's a hard one too. We're going to just be jumping between the two. That makes me think of the song Letter to Me by Brad Paisley, about how like,
I'm loving all these country music references.
Yeah.
I
told you I'm channeling the energy.
I love it.
Just kind of like, you know, that line, "You've got so much going for you, going right." I think it's just that, like kind of just another one of my quotes would be "Trust the process." And I think that's something that I'd want to tell myself, a younger version of myself. Like I started my first year of university in engineering, following my high school boyfriend in Edmonton. Like I am so in such a different place now than I was then. And in that moment, I was like, this is the be all end all. So I guess, just trust the process and enjoy the process too. That is so cliche, but just kind of like enjoying all these moments. Cause you know, you look back and you're like, that was the best moment. And then in that moment, you haven't even realized that 4 years later, you'll be like, that was one of those pivotal times. So
yeah, I have definitely found that. I mean, it's like we're 28. So it's like, we have a lot of life left. But the older I feel like I get, the more I start to realize the moments that are going to be moments that I'll never forget in the moment.
See, that's an amazing thing. Like, that's so awesome.
It's hard.
Yeah.
It's super hard. But at the same time, just trying to soak it in and go, okay, this is going to be one of those, is pretty special. But that's a really great one. That's
Thank
awesome.
you.
You're welcome. So, book. Now we're circling up to like the one that would probably be like, in my opinion, the quickest one to knock off is obviously a pretty important one to you. So what is like your one book that you feel everybody should read other than the 7 Harry Potter books?
Oh, I was just going to say Harry Potter 7. Fine. Narrow down to one of the 7. You know what one that comes to mind? The problem that I think it comes to mind because we talked about my thesis.
Yeah.
But I read this book called Missoula by John Krakauer.
Okay.
It's kind of a heavy topic, but it was incredible. And it's like, I guess it's less about like lessons learned in life and things like that. And it's more just, so it was about the subject of rape in a college town. So it is very heavy, but it was very interesting sports culture and just a very kind of interesting take on it. So I loved that book. I still don't feel confident in that answer. So I'm going to go with Harry Potter 7.
Okay. There you go. Well, I appreciate you being on the show. Thanks so much for joining me. If anybody wants to find out more about Treadstone, if there's like, Wayne Gretzky wants somebody to represent him from a brand perspective, where can they find you?
I would say our website's the best spot, treadstonesports.com.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for joining me, Laurenne. And we'll definitely have to get Josh on the show. Back to Calgary.
Shout out number 3.
Hey, absolutely. Awesome. Thanks so much.
Well, thanks for having me.